These are some of the most expensive and best studio monitors you can buy, over $60,000 worth, and I tested them all in my studio. For the first time ever on YouTube, all these speakers are in one room, from Neumann, Barefoot, ATC, Atom Audio, Focal, and Genelec, and one made me want to switch forever. Yes, I'll tell you which one I'm keeping, but the one I thought I'd love, that didn't go the way I expected. I started with the Focal Trio 6, and within seconds, I had a dangerous thought. Do my mixes actually sound this good? These speakers make everything feel bigger, wider, and better than I remember. The stereo image and sweet spot is excellent. The top end is smooth and detailed, and the low end is tight, but not overwhelming. Transients are comfortable, which makes everything feel a little more polished, even when my mix isn't quite there yet. I think that's why these are so popular in production studios and writing rooms. They make ideas sound really exciting, but they're not the most revealing speakers in this lineup, and that became apparent when I compared them with the others. The mid-range is clean, but not as forward or analytical as something like the Atom Audio or Genelec monitors. Now, one interesting feature is the focus mode. You can switch between 3 speaker configurations, 3-way, 2-way, and single driver with a foot switch, giving you multiple perspectives on your mix without changing monitors. In my space, these were inspiring and easy to listen to for hours, but I had to be careful not to fall in love with the sound too early. Now, Focal are well known for their beryllium tweeters. Focal makes everything in-house in France, including these tweeters. That's aerospace grade metal, hand built into a studio monitor. These aren't just speakers, they're kind of like science experiments that sound really good. And these are some of the most pleasant sounding monitors I've ever used, and I can see why many people pick them. And by the way, these are the least expensive of all the studio monitors I tested. But wait till you hear what happens when I switched to the Genelecs. Now, before I move on to the next monitor, I should mention something that made all of these sound more accurate in my room. I've been using Sonarworks directly inside my Apollo interface. It's crazy that you can do that these days. More on that later, and stick around till the end where I share my top 3 from this lineup. Now, before I go on, leave a comment below on which one you think I'll be keeping for my studio. Now, if the Focals felt like they were on my side, the Genelec 8351Bs felt like they were grading my paper. These are brutally honest speakers, and I mean that as a compliment. I believe these will translate well. The first thing I noticed was the precision in the high end. Hi-hats, breathy vocals, even subtle ambiance details came through with surgical clarity. But the sweet spot is narrow. Move even a little and the image shifts, which means setup and calibration really matters. I used Genelec's GLM software to tune them for my space, and while that took some time, the results were locked in and revealing. If you've never worked on speakers like this, they will challenge you. They don't add warmth or hype the low end. In fact, I'd say they're not immediately enjoyable, but over time, I started to trust them. Every monitor I've been comparing has its own unique sound. Now, where does this one stand? These are not made for fun. They are engineered for neutrality and translation. And because of their size, if you want sub-bass like I did, they need that 12-inch subwoofer they sent me. This thing is huge and puts out serious sub frequencies. I mean, the room shook, but still things sounded accurate. These are the speakers that make you double check your mix choices. Are the vocals too bright? Is that snare too sharp? These will tell you whether you want to hear it or not. You're hearing what's really there, not what you want to hear. That's what makes them ideal for detailed mixing decisions. Now, let's be honest, most of us don't have a perfectly treated room. That's why this isn't just another technical review. It's about how these monitors made me feel in a real space, just like yours. Check it out. If you're wondering how I kept things consistent between all these speakers, this next part is huge. Okay, so the Genelecs came with their own GLM software to tune the speakers to your space, but what if your speakers don't have that? Well, there's a solution. Sonarworks plus an interface by Universal Audio. This video is sponsored by Universal Audio, and they added something really useful to their Apollo interfaces: direct integration with Sonarworks. If you're not familiar with Sonarworks, it's a calibration tool that helps correct for acoustic issues in your room. Normally, you'd run it as a plugin in your DAW or set it up system-wide, but now, with the latest Apollos, you can load your Sonarworks correction profile right into their interface. No plugin, no latency, and no system routing headaches. I mean, I like Sound ID, but running it constantly isn't ideal. Universal Audio made it seamless. I've been using it this way during the entire speaker test, and it made switching between monitors much faster and more consistent. I'm using the Apollo X8P here, but this works across the Apollo lineup, even the twin models. And the Apollo console software allows you to manage the bass, so getting accurate sound from your subwoofer is so easy too. So if you're working in a treated room or even a not so treated one, this is a really smart way to get a more accurate listening environment, and the Apollo interfaces have been in my studio for years now, and things will stay that way. Big thanks to Universal Audio for supporting the channel and for making this integration so seamless. I'll put a link to the updated Apollo line below if you want to check it out. So what about the ATCs? The ATC SCM 25As were the first speakers that made me just stop and listen to the silence between notes. There's something about the way these handle space. Everything feels placed, intentional, and incredibly clear. So I was listening to The Plan by Travis Scott. Sounds were easy to place, and other speakers had a hard time with this song. The stereo field is wide, but controlled, and the mid-range is where these really shine. Vocals are forward, hi-hats are present without piercing, and there's this natural sense of dimension that makes even subtle details pop without exaggeration. If you're placing hi-hats, this is the speaker for you. It's like the perfect balance between pleasant sound and accurate sound. Now, when I listened to Hans Zimmer's Dark Knight, it sounded great on these, but the Genelecs revealed more in cinematic music. These ATCs made me want to open my old mixes and start mixing them again. They make you want to do that. The transient response is fast, but not hyped. It's just clean. EDM, classical, hip-hop, these sounded incredible on the ATCs. Now, even Chris Stapleton's Broken Halos was super forward for vocals, and I could hear nuances in his voice better. But here's the part that really sold me on these. They didn't feel overly fun, but they didn't feel cold either. They felt trustworthy. The only time I missed something was in the sub bass, where these start to roll off. But even then, the low end they do give you is tight and punchy. In my room, they didn't fill this space quite as full as something like the Neumann KH420s, but the trade-off is a more focused sound that doesn't activate the room as much. These are speakers that make you want to keep working on a mix, not because they make it sound good, but because they let you hear what's possible. Did these blow me away? Yes, they did. The ATC hype is real, at least in my studio. Now, there is a speaker I thought I'd love, but things went a bit south. I'll get to that soon, but first, if you think the ATCs impressed me, wait till you hear what the next speakers did. This is the Neumann KH420. It's the most expensive studio monitor that Neumann makes. The Neumann KH420s felt like bringing a movie theater into my studio. These are big, powerful midfield monitors designed for serious rooms, and in my space, they actually worked, almost reaching perfection to my ears. The first thing I noticed was the bass. It's deep, extended, and cinematic, reaching all the way down to 28 Hertz, and it made everything I listened to feel massive, something that none of the other monitors quite matched. It wasn't boomy, it was controlled and tight, with a smooth, full mid-range that made vocals and instruments feel natural and warm. Although female vocals, like those in Kiss Me More by Doja Cat, stood out in the high end a bit too much. Does the KH420's design help with accuracy and imaging? The stereo image was wide and immersive, not laser precise like the ATCs, but emotionally rich. And that's where things stood out to me. The Neumanns made me want to listen. I wasn't just analyzing transients or EQ curves, I was vibing with the music. that made them amazing for composition and playback, and honestly, an absolute joy to use. So how did this compare to the other monitors? They didn't reveal flaws as surgically as the Genelecs, but they still felt accurate, just in a more musical, full-bodied way. Now, if the ATCs made me want to improve my mixes, the Neumanns made me want to just enjoy them. And that feeling has stayed with me. These are the studio monitors I kept dreaming about. Maybe it's the size, maybe just a huge sound from them. Whatever it is, these are the monitors I can't stop thinking about. Okay, so what about the one I thought I'd love? That would have been the PMC-62. I really wanted to include them in this comparison. I'd heard great things about the company and their monitors, but unfortunately, they never sent a pair. But one company stayed on top of things every step of the way. Barefoot. These are the Barefoot Micromain 26s. They look gorgeous. They have a big reputation, and I've always been curious about them ever since I saw them in Ryan Tedder's setup. These come with stands for horizontal placement, but I didn't have the right setup to allow for that, so I set them up vertically. But when I set them up in my space, things didn't click right away. I immediately noticed a bit of resonance in the low mids. I even moved them from the stands to my desk just to double check, and the issues followed. The mids and highs, though, were super comfortable, and once I ran them through the Sonarworks correction, things improved a lot. Now, after that, they really came alive, especially for rock and guitar heavy tracks. Guitars sounded full and textured without masking the vocals, and I felt I could carve space in the mix with more confidence. For mixing guitars, I would pick these hands down. The transient response is quick but not tiring, and the overall tone kind of leaned a little bit warm. There's so much information in the low end that these needed the Sonarworks correction through the Apollo interface in my space. These are the kind of monitors that would make a producer like Ryan Tedder happy. Pop rock, acoustic electric guitars, they shine in that lane. But in my space, I still couldn't quite get past the low-mid buildup. If you invest a lot of time and effort in treating your room, or put these maybe in a different room than mine, I think they would be amazing. Again, all the sonic information is there. The Micromain 26s are putting it out, but in here, in my studio, they weren't quite the right fit. And that's what this whole video is about, real world spaces and how the same speaker can land so differently. So these speakers include Barefoot's meme technology, which lets you switch between different speaker voicings to emulate classic near fields like the NS10s and consumer hi-fi systems. And there's a flat setting as well. It's a nice way to check your mix without swapping monitors, though in my testing, I mostly stuck with that flat mode. If you have a well-treated room, or if you want to invest the time to do it right, these monitors could be good for you. But the last studio monitors actually really surprised me, and they're one of the most affordable ones in this lineup. These are the Adam S3H studio monitors. The H stands for horizontal. You can get these in vertical. I've just got it vertical right now just for the video. I've used some of Adam Audio's entry-level monitors in the past, like the T5Vs, and those always felt a bit harsh in the mids to me. The S3Hs felt much more refined. Right out of the box, they sounded like proper studio monitors, flat, balanced, and detailed. Now the ribbon tweeter is super revealing. You can really hear the texture in vocals and the snap of snare drums, but sometimes it was borderline harsh depending on the mix. The mid-range had some slight resonance on certain tracks. Adele's vocals really brought that out, but on some great mixes like Jason Joshua's work on Pineapple Skies, it just disappeared. The low end was full and powerful. Rockstar by Post Malone hit hard, and EDM tracks like Closer had a wide, deep feel you really want in a mix. I actually loved mixing vocals on these. They gave me a clear picture without feeling as clinical as the Genelecs. And even though they're technically mid fields, I'm happy using these as near fields if I had to on my desk space. These are big, but they translate really well, and they made me want to dive into different genres just to hear how each one of them felt. These are competing with some major brands in this video, and they're holding their own. If you're looking for something more on the affordable side, these are amazing studio monitors. All right, now here's the part you've probably been waiting for, my top 3. And before I get to that, Quick shout out to the stands I just got. These are the ADJ2s from Sound Anchors, and they become one of the most important parts of my setup. I finally got them as I was kind of getting close to the end of filming, and I wish I had them sooner. They are that good. They're super heavy, super solid, and completely eliminated the subtle vibrations I used to feel through the floor. Now, what surprised me the most was how much they tightened up the bass. The stereo image felt more stable, and I noticed a clear low end across every speaker I tested. These are not cheap, but honestly, if you've already invested in serious studio monitors, don't sleep on these stands. I'll link them in the description if you want to check them out. Okay, my top 3. Now, I want to say first that all these monitors are in a league of quality that anyone would love. I mean, each of them are being used by top producers and top studios around the world. These are the best monitors in the world. So my top 3 really just applies to my space and my ears. So here we go. In third place, the Focal Trio 6. These speakers just made everything sound good. They're inspiring, smooth, and really enjoyable to work on, especially for writing or production sessions. They're kind of safe, and hey, with a reasonable price tag, they might be the gateway drug into high-end monitoring. They are easy to love. Second, the Neumann KH420s. They delivered a huge immersive sound and deep cinematic low end. And like I said, I'm still dreaming about them. They made me want to sit back and listen. I think they also complement my larger studio space really well. Now, in first place are the ATC SCM25As. These were the monitors that made me want to mix everything again. Were they the most pleasant? No. Did they have the most wow factor? No. But they just landed in the sweet spot between all of that. The detail, the depth, the way they handled transients and space, it all just felt effortless. They didn't flatter my mix, they made me want to improve them. I will say that I'm gonna look into getting the ATC subwoofer as well, because I do miss some of the low end that I heard from the other speakers, and that will raise the overall cost. But I think I'm going to completely love that setup. Now, every studio monitor in this lineup had something unique to offer, whether it was brutal honesty, cinematic depth, or just flat out musical joy. But remember, you don't need to spend thousands to make great music. Once you learn how your speakers translate, you'll know exactly where to compensate. That's where tools like Sonarworks and the integration with the Universal Audio Apollo interfaces really help make things consistent across all of these monitors. Big thanks again to Universal Audio for supporting this video and for making the process of switching between these speakers way smoother than it would have been otherwise. Let me know in the comments which ones stood out to you or which ones you're using in your setup. Thanks to all of the companies who sent me their speakers for review. Keep making the music you love, and I'll see you in the next video.